Hi everyone, in today's video on the Hittites, we will briefly discuss the successor to King Radner of the Hittites, the man who would become known as King Hattusili I. After the death of King Radner, his son, who at first was also called Radner, became king in circa 1650 BC. One of the earliest major decisions that this new king made was to move the site of the kingdom's capital to the abandoned site of Hattusa, that had earlier been destroyed and cursed by King Anita. In spite of Anita's curse, Radner rebuilt and relocated many of his subjects to the new capital, which he renamed Hattusa. In honour of this important event, Radner renamed himself to Hattusili, which means Man of Hattusa. These two connected events seem to indicate that Hattusili wished to create a new identity for both himself and his kingdom. Another major new feature of this king's reign was his interest in military expansion into the lands of northern Syria, to the southeast of his Anatolian kingdom, presumably so as to have access to and control of the land and sea routes that pass by and through the region. At this time, northern Syria was controlled by the kingdom of Yamhad. After securing his position in Anatolia for the time being, he launched his first campaign into Syria, during which he captured and sacked the city of Alaka, though failed to take the important city of Halab, or modern-day Aleppo. The king's campaign was cut short though when news of trouble along his western borders in the lands known as Azerwa reached him. He therefore travelled with his army westward to deal with this problem closer to home. However, while the king was dealing with this new problem on his western border, which would become a common enough problem for many future Hittite kings, yet another new threat to his kingdom from the southeast came in the form of a people known as the Hurrians, who may have been angered by the king's campaign into northern Syria. They launched an invasion into the Hittite heartlands. The Hurrians would become yet another persistent issue for Hittite rulers to consider. This pattern of attempted military expansion by the Hittites, being quickly followed by problems closer to home, would persist throughout the entire history of the Hittites as an ancient power. This indicates that Hittites faced a major lack of manpower in its military during times of foreign expansion, which left the Hittite homeland open to attack by opportunistic enemies of the Hittites. Hattusili apparently dealt with both threats from the west and southeast, which left him feeling secure and confident enough to launch yet another major campaign into Syria. In this second invasion, the king compares himself to a lion on the rampage, capturing, destroying and plundering many Syrian cities, whose treasures were then taken back to the new capital of Hattusa. In this campaign, the king apparently reached and crossed the river Euphrates eastward into Mesopotamia. As a result, he compared himself to the earlier Akkadian king Sargon the Great, who had also centuries earlier crossed the same river westwards into Syria while on military campaign. It is unknown just how many military campaigns Hattusili set out on during his 30-year reign, as the main historical source for the king's reign, the Annals of Hattusili, which are only partially preserved, only appear to record the early years of his long reign. So it is possible that he waged many more wars during his time as king of Hatti. One way or another, these military exploits helped to establish the king and the kingdom of the Hittites as a strong, wealthy and formidable military power that could not be ignored by other nearby ancient states in the Near East. This reputation would last for centuries. Hattusili faced one further issue before his death, his choice of a successor. This proved problematic as his son, who had already been given a post as governor within the kingdom, apparently took part in an uprising against his father and was arrested. His daughter, whose husband was a possible candidate for the throne, had also apparently led a revolt against the king and was exiled. It is not clear whether these rebellions led by his son and daughter were as a result of the king being unpopular within his kingdom, or were as a result of the greed of his children. Then a nephew, son of the king's sister, was rejected as well, and both the king's sister, who the king claimed was like a serpent who bellowed like an ox, and nephew were also exiled. The issue of succession was finally resolved when, according to the ancient document known as the Testament of Hattusili, the king, who apparently was on his deathbed, adopted his very young grandson, Mursili, and made him his heir. The testament then records that Hattusili's last words were spoken to a woman named Hattusa, possibly one of the king's wives or concubines, and said to her, fearing his own imminent death, "Wash me well, hold me to your breast, protect me from the earth lying against your breast." The king died in circa 1620 BC, after a long 30-year reign, which had helped to establish the Kingdom of Hatti as an important power within the ancient Near East. Next time we will learn about the reign of his young heir, Mursili. Until then, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe for more new videos on Fridays.